Welcome everyone to today's open house. I wish it was in person. I like meeting people, but this is the second best option, and it's a good way to reach people from all parts of the country and the world. So welcome. I'm going to walk through a little bit about the program and our curriculum, and then, as Michael said, I'll turn it over to Haley and Professor Jana Kiraman to talk about their work. So at Tulane, this is really, I think, sums up our program really well. Preservation isn't just about saving buildings, it's about sustaining culture, community, and identity. We are based in the School of Architecture and Built Environment. And though we talk about the built environment a lot, it's the built environment only exists because of the communities that built it and sustain it. So our focus really is on people as opposed to buildings, but I think really all preservation programs have that view in essence. It's about people. Um, so for me, my practice, I mainly specialize in cultural heritage sites, vernacular architecture, specifically in the Gulf South region and deathscapes. And deathscapes could encompass cemeteries, graveyards, mass burial spaces, unmarked burial spaces. I research the socioeconomic issues and burial practices and how inequities shape selective and collective memory. Um, I also have done quite a bit of masonry conservation and digital documentation and mapping. And in addition to my role at Tulane, I have a cultural heritage preservation firm called Gambrell and Peak, and I work throughout the country, but again, mainly in this Gulf South region. So, a couple of my current projects, I'm working with a team on a grant-funded project to survey every standing structure on Grand Isle. So, Grand Isle is in one of the southernmost points of Louisiana. It's really prone to coastal erosion and rising sea levels and storms. So, our goal through this project is to do a comprehensive survey of the island, which has never been done before, document every building, and then we're going to build a ArcGIS database where we track changes to the built environment over time, starting in Grand Isle, but eventually expanding to include all of southern Louisiana. Another project that I'm still actively working on is the Louisiana Register of Historic Cemeteries. This is another grant-funded project, and actually working with a team of students, we mapped over 8,600 cemeteries in the state of Louisiana. We're trying to mark the location of every known burial site in the state. So it's a very large project. It's a growing project, and we're working also directly with the public to crowdsource some of that information now. And I'm also working with New Orleans Catholic Cemeteries, a local nonprofit called Save Our Cemeteries, and the World Monument Fund on a couple of initiatives in different cemeteries here in New Orleans, mainly in St. Louis Cemetery number 2. We're doing a lot of hands-on restoration work of various tombs, and that's also an ongoing process with a lot of partners. The New Orleans Master Crafts Guild is also a key member of that team. So why Tulane and why preservation? Really, this is so true. Um, there is no place quite like New Orleans. And to study preservation, it really is such an amazing place to do it. And you're exposed to so many things. It's such a unique landscape, physical and cultural landscape. And why Tulane? Um, Tulane in general is really community driven. We're really invested in community and to helping communities. Being here too, I like to call it a very, very big small town. Everybody knows everybody. And so you'll hear probably Haley will mention it, but I always tell the students like we have a key to the city. Like any building we want to get in, they open it for us. We're very lucky to have such great relationships with the city of New Orleans and all the stakeholders involved because it really is open access to anything we want to explore. And an ongoing collaborative process between the program and the communities that we serve. Another thing about Tulane that I just want to pop in really quick and say, I have never been at a school that supplies as much student support as Tulane. We have Academic Writing Center. We have um, all like different learning support systems in place. You can get a just an advisor to help you through your time at Tulane. There's just something all the time for our students, and I think it's a community of nurturing. We want you to succeed, and like Tulane really lives by that. All of our faculty within the program are active practitioners. Um, we work on real world projects, so you're not just learning in the classroom, you're actually out in the field doing things. We love cross-disciplinary. So the program, it's a program, not a department. All programs in the school are programs. So we have architecture, we have landscape architecture and engineering, we have sustainable real estate development, we have SICE, we have design. There's always urbanism. And we're all programs, which lends itself to some fluidity. So students from different disciplines oftentimes take classes in other ones, and there's a really nice dialogue between the various programs. So why historic preservation? And this is something I think also is very true. It's not about freezing time and freezing a physical place in time. It's about designing continuity and allowing those places to move into the future in a sustainable and equitable way. Um, so through the program, we empower you to protect heritage while also leading innovation. So you'll have projects where you try to do adaptive reuse. You'll learn about tools to help build sustainable structures moving forward. So like integrating modern sustainable practices into historic buildings. We really cover a lot in the program. So we blend art, science, and advocacy. So from material conservation to urban policy. Again, we work hands-on in historic neighborhoods. And also, you're going to learn from your faculty, but also from preservation professionals working in the field. We have a lot of guest lectures come in and a lot of community partners that we work with, um, and really shaping the future of our past and how we interpret our past and how we can carry narratives forward that in the past have traditionally been silenced. So this is our current faculty, including full-time and adjunct faculty. They are all, again, active practitioners in their field. When I run through the curriculum, I'll talk a little bit about each one of them, but they all bring such a high level of expertise into the classroom. And oftentimes, like I just put out a call today for student interns for my firm, but we also take you into our own private practice often because we always have different projects coming up where we need an extra set of hands. So there is also opportunity to work directly with faculty members outside of the classroom environment. So what will you learn? We try to fit as much as possible into the 2 years. 2 years, I wish I had each student for like 10 years, but so you cover historic research and documentation, building conservation, material science, cultural heritage, urban policy, adaptive reuse, sustainable design, and that's just like a small sampling of everything that we cover. We offer 3 modes of study. So we have the Master of Science in Historic Preservation. We have a graduate certificate in preservation studies. And so that's a certificate at the graduate level, either as a standalone or as a certificate to augment another program that you're studying. So some of the Masters of Architecture are in that have the certificate. We have a PhD student in art history currently pursuing the certificate. And we have an undergraduate minor in historic preservation. Students in our program, if you're in the MSHP program, you are also welcome to take to obtain certificates in other disciplines through the use of your electives. So some students in the past have gained the Graduate Sustainable Real Estate Development Certificate, the Public Interest Design Certificate. Those are both housed within the School of Architecture and Built Environment. Other students have gotten the GIS certificate, which is in the School of Science and Engineering, or the Disaster Resilience Leadership Certificate, which is in the School of Professional Advancement. So again, I keep stressing this, but it's a huge component of who we are. Studio projects in real neighborhoods, collaborating with local, national, and international partners, field work, internships, community engagement. We want you out of the classroom, meeting and doing and exploring and learning through doing. So you come in after the application, of course. The first summer is a orientation, which is all school, and what we term a preservation boot camp. So most of our students don't come to us from an architecture program, though some do. Ones that do not and that want to feel more comfortable coming in, over the course of a week, we go over hand drafting, CAD drawing, um, sketching, a couple of different documentation methods. You also learn them all in the first studio class you take, but this is the way for you to feel more confident going into that first semester class. It's just a basic overview, but for the students that have gone through it, I think it's very beneficial just to make you have a little bit more confidence in the classroom. And then the first year begins. So the first year we offer the first semester Preservation Studio 1. Again, that's our documentation studio. So you will learn the very basics, how to measure, how to draw digitally, how to understand spaces through documentation. So that's a 6 credit course. We also have Introduction to Historic Preservation, which is an overview of the field in the United States. So a lot of it has to do with the systems and mechanisms in place to make our work possible. You have History of American Architecture, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then archival research methods, where you learn how to research a building from pre-construction on the plot to today, really. So you track chains of title, you check historic maps and see changes over time. You see changes over time in the physical building, and you're introduced to various archives around New Orleans and online that could help aid you in that research, which ultimately can help you in the future with any project that you're working on. Then you take a well-deserved break, which is coming up for our current students, and you come back for the spring semester. Preservation Studio 2 is generally our planning studio that also includes most years international trip. Some years the international trip is positioned slightly somewhere else in the curriculum, but this year we're running it in Studio 2 over spring break. So the students will be traveling to St. Thomas, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You take New Orleans architecture, which is focused again on New Orleans architecture, conservation technology, where you are introduced to material studies. You really get to know materials. The way the course is going to be taught this year, students will have a lot of hands-on learning experiences like pouring plaster and making molds and doing basic brick coursework and really understanding the materials on a building scale. And then preservation professional development. It's a 1 credit course. And in that course, we teach you how to go out and be successful in applying for internships and ultimately jobs. So we go over your resume. We learn how to best present yourself, how to search for jobs, how to negotiate. And we give you those skills so that way not only can you get a job eventually, but also you can best represent yourself in a professional way while still a student. So either applying for conferences or internships or practicum experiences, you'll have the tools to feel confident in doing so. So Preservation Studio 2, like I just mentioned, this year they're going to go to St. Thomas, which is a U.S. territory, so it's not really international, but we're counting it as an international trip. And this semester, the topic of the studio changes every year. This year it is on World War II era military architecture, mainly bunkers and forts. So this fort is located on Water Island in St. Thomas. So throughout the course of the semester, students will be learning about the policies and different aspects of how these places came to exist and what their imprint on these location means for the residents and for posterity. And so then the students will go there, they'll document this site, and they'll come up with some plans for future use. Then, after the semester is done, is the summer. So, one thing I forgot. In spring, you also take preservation research seminar. And so that class teaches you how to do um, your literature review, your methodology statement, how to start building out a research proposal for the work that you're going to start undertaking in this summer. So you will begin your thesis research or your practicum work, and that class in the spring will prep you for either of those. A lot of students also choose to do their internship over the summer, but that's a flexible timeline. Really, you can complete those hours at any point in the 2 years. And then every fall, the school puts out a call for travel fellowships. I always encourage students to apply for them. So you can get up to $4,000 to fund a research experience anywhere in the world. So if students are awarded that, and a lot of our students are, they take advantage of that during the summer months. So a thesis. So if you choose a thesis, and it's really up to you, a thesis or a practicum, they both count equally. One is not better than the other. They just have a different focus. So if you have a research topic you're very invested in and you want to explore, thesis is probably the best way to go about that. And so you start forming your ideas and learning how to research in that spring semester. Over the summer is when you'll do a lot of your field work and research documentation. The final, which is at the end of your second year, is a paper with a minimum of 25,000 words, roughly 100 pages. But again, we walk you through the process. You're never on your own in this program. There's always someone there to help you along. So some students choose to do this. Some recent thesis titles I put up here. It's really up to you what you want to study, whatever it is. You have a thesis committee that you select. So there's a director, and then you get to pick two additional committee members. So one has to be a faculty member somewhere at Tulane University, not necessarily in the program. And the other person can be an expert in that topic from anywhere in the world. So we always come out with a really wide range of thesis topics, which I think is really fascinating and interesting. Other students choose to do a practicum. So a practicum is 480 hours, which is about 3 months full-time work. And so that's why a lot of students do it in the summer with an outside organization. It's kind of like an extended internship, but a little bit more intense than that. So throughout that process, you work with whatever organization, and then when you come back in the fall and that second year, you will write a paper about that experience, which is about 50 pages. But again, we'll guide you through the process. Students have been all over doing their practicum. So one recent student went to Santa Fe and was working with the Historic Santa Fe Foundation on Adobe. Another student did hers with the National Park Service in Washington State, and she did a historic structures report there. Another student worked with the Archdiocese of New Orleans to create a UNESCO nomination. And then on and on. Other students worked in Ohio on an adaptive reuse project. A practicum is a good option for students that want to learn things that were not necessarily covered in the curriculum, like Adobe. We touch on it, but we are not a location where Adobe can be successfully constructed. So if students are interested in those types of experiences, they do a practicum. Also, if you have already identified a firm or a place in the country or the world that you would like to see yourself ultimately working in, it's a great way to get your foot in the door. A lot of our students end up being offered jobs through their practicum experiences. An internship is usually 200 hours. We're going to shorten it a little bit next year. And it is with a host organization. I feel very, very strongly that both practicums and internships should be paid experiences. Um, I think it's really important to have our work be valued. You are going in as a student, but also as somebody that has taken the classes and has put in the time and does have really important knowledge to share with your host organization. So you should be paid. For internships and practicums, we have a very wide net of contacts. So if you have an interest in working in a different place or with a specific company, let us know. And likely we will know someone that works there, or we will know somebody that knows somebody that will work there. And we'll help guide those processes as well. So travel fellowships, like I just said, they take place usually in the summer. We have students going all over the place. The two on the bottom that are pictured, one went to Peru and with an anthropology professor and studied a Peruvian archaeological site where she laser scanned everything and did independent study with him afterwards. Another student traveled to Miami to assess neoliberalism's impact on the Gulf Coast preservation. This last summer, we had a student go to Spain and Morocco to study the historic ironwork in those locations. And we had a student go to up to the Smithsonian as well to do research over the summer. So, New Orleans, it is, if you've never been here before, it's so different from what you imagine, at least for me. I'm not from here, and I had a totally different idea of what it was before I got here. And then I got here, and it's just every day you learn something new about this place. It's a really amazing place to live and experience the built environment. It's a city with a long tradition of craft and building traditions. Um, and it's a great place to study climate adaptation. All cities, I can't imagine, there's really no part of the country that is not dealing with some impact of natural disasters. And I think being on the front lines of that, there's so many lessons to be learned, either to stay here and practice or to take back to other parts of the country and implement there. But it's really a place where you're going to be exposed to a wide range of issues that you're going to have to come up with really inventive, sustainable solutions to. And the communities here are very used to preservation as a term and as a field, and it's something people understand and are generally comfortable with. So it's not as hard of a sell as it is in other parts of the country. So all of that in the summer, then you come back for your second year. Your second year, there is Architectural Conservation Lab, where you'll start learning some material science, like paint analysis and wood identification. There's all kinds of things that you cover in that class. There's also a historic preservation law course taught out of Tulane Law School, and you're able to take two additional electives. We have at least one elective every semester running out of the program, but you could also take electives within the school or other electives at the university as long as they're approved. And then the last semester, You work on either your thesis or your practicum. You finalize the writing and move into the editing stage. You're able to take two more electives, and then your internship credit counts in this semester, even though you could do your internship hours like wherever you want, wherever it makes the most sense for you to fit it in. So, career pathways. Preservation is a huge field. There's so many directions you can take. We have a lot of students leave us and go into design and planning. Actually, two students from last year were hired by planning firms prior to graduating, and the positions waited for them to graduate a couple months actually, which was great. Cultural resource management, we have students working for private cultural resource management firms, nonprofit and government leadership, tons of people at the local, state, and federal level from our program. Real estate and development consulting. There's a huge need for historic tax credit work, and you are going to be well equipped to deal with that kind of work if you go through the program. And other students really enjoy academia and they decide to move forward with PhD studies or other studies. Haley, who you'll meet in a minute, is deciding to go to law school, which is amazing. Other students get really into advocacy or conservation research. And so there's so many different gateways. And I think we touch upon almost everything. There's always more to touch upon, but we give you a very wide range of topics and allow you to grow in whatever direction best fits your interests. We also will never let go of you. So we have a super strong alumni network. We also have partnerships all over the place. Local, national, and international. Again, like firms that we work with, organizations that we work with, that we have good relationships with, that I could just call and say, can you host a student or can you talk to this student? And they're more than happy to do so. We have local alumni events, at least two a semester, but usually more. And then we're present at different preservation conferences and other things. But we are a unit, a strong and growing unit. Our program was founded in 1997. So there's many generations of alumni that have now gone out, and you can find our alumni working really across the world. It's really amazing. So why apply right now? You get to learn from a really great group of faculty who are not only leaders in their field, but they care. They care about preservation and they care about you as students succeeding. You get to study in New Orleans, which is, I can honestly say, one of the most architecturally rich cities in the world. You get to build a whole set of skills. And then you get to join a pretty tight-knit, creative, and mission-driven community of folks that we don't just say that we care, like we actively do work to, this sounds like silly, but we try to better the world through our work. So preservation at Tulane is about people, places, and possibilities. It's about asking how we can care for what's come before us, so we can imagine what comes next. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Haley. Haley is a second year graduate student in the program, and she's going to talk a little bit about her work and research and her time in the program.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
If you hear any hooting and hollering, I am with a couple of my classmates right now, and don't worry about it. They're just trying to embarrass me. Go ahead, Heather. So why I chose the program at Tulane. I was originally a landscape designer. That's what my BS is in landscape architecture, and I worked for a few years and felt like I needed to make a change. I knew that I was interested still in scholarship in the built environment, but I was also interested in historic preservation and history as well. Um, and I chose the program at Tulane because I felt that it had a good breadth of the fields. There is physical work, restoration work, there's research, there's some of that more like high level thinking. And to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with this master's program. So it was important to me that I kind of got like a sampler platter basically. But because the program is so diversified, it attracts a diverse group of students. So the folks that I'm sitting with right now are their backgrounds in architecture. We have somebody who's a blacksmith, somebody who's coming from Africana and museum studies, an anthropologist, sort of all across the board. And at this level of school, you're as much as you're learning from the faculty, and the faculty are amazing, you're also learning a ton from your peers. So that was very important to me. And again, I love being a student. That's why I'm going to law school after this. And it was important for me to come back to school and re-engage in academia. This is sort of reiterating a few of Heather's points, so I suppose we're just like hitting this over the head. But New Orleans is truly a unique architectural setting. There's all sorts of styles. People really value the architecture and preservation, and it's a great and encouraging place to learn historic preservation. Um, and again, like its location in the Gulf, we have all of this climate change and all of these pressures that cause us to really be innovators in this field, and really kind of lead folks with these ongoing issues. That New Orleans has a tight-knit professional community. You not only are some of our lecturers and faculty professors of practice and own their own practices, so you get to meet them that way. But everyone knows everyone. You meet all of these different practitioners at these little mixers and things. So I try not to piss anyone off because that could be detrimental. Um, and New Orleans has a very rich historical narrative to contend with. And that shows up in the built environment and how we do research and all of the stories that we are uncovering and trying to communicate. It's it's a very helpful practice in learning how to, especially in the political environment we are in now, really communicate truth and be responsible in how we are dealing with history. Some cool stuff. So Tulane really loves to let us travel. Heather spoke about it before, but there's always a trip abroad. We did ours during the summer after our first year. We went to Scotland, and we got to see a bunch of cool castles and really contrast the way different countries deal with heritage conservation and historic preservation. I've taken great advantage of this, but they love to send you to little conferences. I applied for some awards and actually got to go out and I went to DC to advocate for historic preservation and got to, take meetings with my congressional representatives. And yeah, like Heather said, the alumni network is really diverse. The reason that I decided that I did want to pursue law, I got to talk with somebody who works at the National Trust as a lawyer, and that really inspired me and spurred me on with the rest of my career. So it was a nice connection to make. Tulane loves to foster individual interests. So I kind of quickly discovered that I was really interested in Chinatowns. And received a lot of support from the faculty and a lot of enthusiasm in my research interests. And I've sort of been able to worm the Chinese community and Chinatowns into all of these different projects throughout my classes in a bunch of different studios. And it's been encouraged and has helped me as a person continue on this interest of mine. And I got to my internship this past summer was with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, working on their America's Chinatowns initiative. And the reason I got that job, not only am I a phenomenal candidate, but I actually met the person who was doing the hiring at a conference. And there were a ton of candidates for that job. And I think because I made that personal connection, I got the opportunity to do that internship. And beyond the program, like I said, they assist in any and all of your next steps. Folks are going on to do their PhDs and receiving help with those applications. I'm obviously going on to law school and receiving help and advice for that. But a lot of folks will stick around in New Orleans and receive help getting jobs. And Tulane is great at making and fostering those connections that help you in your professional career beyond. Um, I got to, over the summer, I volunteered for one of our professors' field schools and went to Martha's Vineyard, which I'd never been to before. That picture is one of my classmates and I at a historic millworking class where we made our own windows. It's still sitting in my house. I have it now, but I know how to make it. I haven't really done anything with the window. But yeah, I mean, I think anywhere you want to go beyond this program, somebody at Tulane is doing it or is adjacent to it. And you can always ask to make that connection, and they are more than happy to do it. And that is all I got for you.
Okay, thank you, Haley. Let me go backwards. Actually, we'll go to Michael's slides first. So Haley is like she mentioned two other students. Those are two other second year students. So like even outside of the classroom, they're all like working together on projects. We never see enough of each other, which I think is just something that happens organically all the time
Yeah,
with
these two won't leave me alone.
Yeah. Well, I just want to take a moment to talk about the admissions process for the program. Um, After this webinar concludes, I'm going to send you an email. It's going to have links to the admissions page, to tuition, and more information about the program. So this will come to you. The application is free to apply. With the application, we ask for just kind of a research writing sample. If you've done any kind of graphic work, a sample of that, just kind of get an understanding of your writing ability and how you think. Statement of interest, really telling us who you are, what your goals are, why do you want to do this program at Tulane, and what do you hope to accomplish after you complete the program. Official transcripts, two letters of recommendation if you're coming from undergraduate program or another school, university, maybe one of those being from faculty professors. But if you're coming from the professional world, two professional references is fine as well. A resume, and then English proficiency if you're an international student. We have a deadline coming up December 1st, early admission. That just means that if you want to receive a decision early, apply by that date. There's no special admissions or scholarships with that. It's purely if you want to receive a decision by mid-December, by December 1st. And then everyone should apply by January 15th, and we usually give decisions by mid-February for that. After that, we're really rolling admissions. So as soon as you apply, we try and send those decisions back. With April 15th being the ultimate deadline for you to tell us if you're coming. And next slide, Heather. Now we have a lot of opportunities available for students if finances is a concern, if you feel like finances is a barrier, just talk to us. I encourage you to apply. Everyone that applies is automatically considered for all scholarships. The main scholarship we have is a merit scholarship. That's based on an assessment of your application materials, your work sample, and that ranges from 25 to 75% of tuition. We have the Boudreaux Scholarship, and that's really a scholarship for students who are want to increase opportunity in the built environment. And so that would really come out in your personal statement. There's more information about these online, but we also have federal aid to the FAFSA. There's options for payment plans. There's internships and assistantships opportunities. So please talk to us if you feel like finance is a barrier. But that's all I have to say with admissions. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Arthi so she can talk about her research.
Thanks, Michael. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Aarti Janakiraman. I'm an assistant professor of preservation and urbanism here at the school. My background actually is in urban planning and architecture, and so that's really sort of the types of perspectives and lenses that I bring to thinking about historic preservation issues. I'm going to take us, I'll talk a little bit about my research and some of the courses that we offer, and you'll sort of see that, in addition to focusing on New Orleans and using the city really as a lab for learning, we also sort of offer sort of more kind of global perspectives as well. So broadly speaking, my research centers on the spatial politics of historic preservation in cities. At the core, what I'm interested in is using heritage and its conservation as a lens to thinking about processes of development, processes of nation building, thinking about things like diplomacy, and thinking about questions like social engineering and social equity. With my interest in heritage, a lot of my work, at least a lot of my current work and my current research, is focused on World Heritage and UNESCO's World Heritage Program. So I find this to be an interesting lens, actually, to thinking about some of the tensions that emerge between globalized and sort of universalized notions of heritage and how it should be protected, and the highly localized and even personal experience that living heritage as, cities as living heritage actually represent. This is a fairly widespread program. Today, there's over 1,200 sites on the World Heritage List, and these are spread across 170 different countries. And while some of these World Heritage sites might be monuments, they might be sort of archaeological ruins and archaeological sites, many of them are actually living heritage sites. They're actually, sort of neighborhoods in cities. And so I think, sort of preserving them as heritage, but as, kind of museumized spaces can be very contentious, especially for the communities that actually live here. So one of my ongoing projects looks at the role of heritage in development and diplomacy in Sri Lanka, in Galle Fort, which is a World Heritage Site. So a lot of the conservation efforts in Galle Fort have actually been under an international cooperation and a heritage partnership between the government of Sri Lanka and the Netherlands. A lot of the heritage in Galle Fort represents heritage from the Dutch colonial period in Sri Lanka. But what's interesting is that, when we see what the implications of this are on the ground, heritage conservation under this international partnership between a former colonizer and its sort of former colony has led to a selective prioritization of the Dutch past. So you see this in the built environment, you sort of see that in these images where shops and restaurants and buildings are named after sort of Dutch things, right? So you have the Dutch Wall Luxury Boutique, the Old Dutch House, things like that. So you have a sort of harkening back to this particular past. On the flip side, with these conservation efforts in partnership in the Dutch, it has also led to some very problematic impacts on the ground. So with an influx of foreign investors, you have rising real estate values within this site, and that has really driven out a lot of the local community because they can't really afford to live here anymore. With the growth of tourism, you see also a commercialization and a commodification of the built heritage. But rather than residents, it's actually often outsiders that either people that live outside the fort, people from other parts of the world who have really been able to tap in and sort of capitalize and benefit from this tourism. And with tourism-led gentrification, this has also actually displaced a lot of the original communities that live within the fort. For the people that still remain, touristification of this place comes with real hardships and real intrusions into the daily lives of these people. A lot of these impacts that I talked about, like gentrification and displacement, commodification, these are impacts that actually resonate with a lot of other cities, not just across the global south, but across the world, right? So we see a lot of these growing pains associated with tourism, even here in New Orleans. Another project that I'm currently working on focuses on the design politics of decolonization in India. So this is a project that's focused in New Delhi, and it looks at the evolution of an urban landscape, but also of a soundscape, and how you have sort of transitions from an urbanism of imperialism to an urbanism of nationalism in India over the last century. Another project that I have ongoing is looking at coastal heritage and climate change. So this is a project that focuses on the impacts of climate change on coastal World Heritage sites, focusing particularly on historic port cities in South and Southeast Asia. So these are just some ongoing work that is part of my research that hopefully gives you a sense of, the types of themes and the types of questions that I'm interested in. So a lot of my research, like I mentioned, is focused on World Heritage. And this is something that has informed some of my teaching as well. So right now in the fall, I'm teaching a class that's called Developing World Heritage, where we look at the ethics and the politics of World Heritage designation of these processes, as well as its role in development. So students who are taking this class, which include actually Haley, Emily, and Ashlyn, who are on this call, they're doing final projects where they're studying World Heritage across the world. So students are looking at World Heritage sites and doing research on sites in Nepal, in Taiwan, in Robben Island in South Africa, in Burkina Faso, in Nigeria, in Mexico, in Cuba. So this is really an opportunity for them to delve into the types of questions and themes that they're interested in, but also explore new geographies and new places as a way of understanding a particular phenomenon. And Heather already mentioned this, but in the spring, I'm going to be teaching this new studio that's looking at World War II heritage in the Caribbean. And the studio really looks at the complex history of American occupation overseas. And it's really going to be an exploration of sort of new uses for defunct military architecture that can try and balance heritage conservation with community needs. So, this is really sort of an opportunity, I think, to think about how adaptive reuse projects can both confront but also transform military and colonial legacies of these sites, and do that in ways that really serves the civic and cultural needs of resident communities. So for the first iteration of this studio, we're going to be traveling to St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands. And the hope is that this is really going to be part of a series of studios where we'll focus on adaptive reuse of World War II sites across sort of other parts of the Caribbean as well in future years. So I'll just kind of end by saying that, a lot of my work is really sort of focused in the global South, in South and Southeast Asia, though some of my professional work, is spread across the world. A lot of my professional work is either in Boston, New York City here in the States, but also in India, Singapore, Malaysia. And with sort of this professional work, the research agenda, and the teaching, I think the emphasis for me really is on thinking critically about heritage conservation, about historic preservation here in the States, and really thinking and asking these questions, right? Like, what is conserved, by whom, for whom, who gets to decide, who is included and excluded from these processes? And so I think these are important questions to consider because heritage conservation, like Heather said right in the beginning, it's not just about buildings, but it's really about society, it's about people, it's about community, it's about identity. So I'll stop with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Arthi. That was great.
Great.
Well, now we want to hear from you. We have the Q&A function of the webinar. If you have a question, feel free to type it in there, and we would all like to answer it for you. Give people a few seconds. I'll just ask one real quick. We've mentioned a lot of outcomes, career outcomes for some of our alumni, but what if we wanted to bucket it into certain things? What are some of the things that our alumni are doing after they graduate?
I think, what are they not doing? Question. It really is like so many different things. A lot of people do end up going into consulting, so they have more control over the projects that they're working on, but it's really anything. Like preservation is such a broad field and there's so many different avenues people could take. Um, a lot of people, just from like a financial perspective, a lot of people when they first graduate, if they have federal loans, they go into nonprofit or government work because as things are right now, after 10 years, those loans could be forgiven in those fields. But it's so broad. Like
Yeah.
there's
Well,
not
well,
really an
Haley,
answer to that.
Haley, we know you're going to law school. What are the other two doing?
What are the other two doing? Oh my God. She wanted to answer a question so bad. She's sitting at me looking. Ashlyn is pursuing a PhD program. Emily has a few options. She's applying for a PhD program. She's considering remaining in the city and working for a firm here. So time's ticking.
One
Gotta
thing
make a
about
decision.
Emily is that through her practicum, she's been introduced to all these different firms, and some firms have already told her, we want
Yeah.
come visit us because we want to hire you. So she's already kind of being taken away from me.
Yeah, Emily definitely used the practicum to do some very, very, practical work. And works with the city, works with the PRC. Sorry, Emily, I'm like answering your question and you're right here. But
Answer it. Like Emily can join.
Emily,
Yeah.
you wanna actually get in here? They're asking about like what we're doing after.
What we're doing after?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
specifically you.
So right now I work for the PRC for my practicum where I'm doing some research for them.
The Preservation Resource Center.
Yes.
Orland.
And I've gotten to meet with a lot of stakeholders who have a firm or they work in the city or something. So I have some options in terms of what I'm going to be doing. People are very impressed with the work, guys. Do a practicum if you can.
Hey.
It's very, very fun. But yeah, I am also applying for a PhD program at Carnegie Mellon. So
Mhm.
we'll see.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know.
Arthi, I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you bring the students along in your research?
I think the sort of so far, so this is my second year here at the school, and I think, right now actually Haley has taken two of my classes at this point. And I think, in the spring we did a studio here in New Orleans where we looked at issues of tourism in the French Quarter, which very much is, I think, even if the geography isn't where my research is focused, I think thematically aligns really well with my interests and my research, and that's something that we sort of explored here in the French Quarter. And then right now the Developing World Heritage course that I mentioned, I think is also another way in which it's a great opportunity to learn with the students, to explore sort of new places, new topics, new questions, while also introducing students to a sort of a global framing that maybe they haven't had an opportunity to have exposure to before this. So I think, yeah, that's kind of two examples that I would give, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
And again, if anyone has a question, any participants or students have a question, feel free to ask it now. We've only got a few more minutes left. Um,
One thing I want to just mention while people
Sure.
are here, I love if you email me and say you want to have a meeting with me and talk about the program or talk about specific things that you're interested in. I'm always happy to make time for that. I love making that time because I get to meet new people and hear about new projects. So please take advantage of that. Please email me. Either we could set up a Zoom or you can come on campus and I can give you a tour, but I'm happy always. Don't feel like you're not bothering me. Like I like doing that part of it.
Yes, absolutely. I think everyone here would attest to that too. So we'll go ahead and end the webinar there. Like I said, after this event, we're going to send you an email with more information about admissions, the program, and my contact information. If you want to talk to any of the people here, feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to connect you. If you want to talk to another student in the program, we're really good about matching your interests with students or recent alumni interests. And so we're happy to do that here. But we want to thank you all for coming and hope you have a great day, and we'll hopefully see your application soon. Thank you.
Thank you.